What is going on, everyone? How are things going? We are live today with Jack from Scale to talk about in our first blockchain one-on-one educational series. And today we're going to be talking about basically what is gas. And I think this is a super interesting topic because I think that in the mix of everything going on nowadays, a lot of people kind of fail to kind of like really remember like why it is such a problem, and like why are these innovative companies trying to solve the problem, like why was it even there in the first place. And so we're going to kind of be diving into that, kind of some of the history on it, like why it was created, why was Ethereum put in place, like what are the negative impacts that gas is having on the market from like from a business as an adoptability standpoint. And then kind of jump into how Scale and them are helping solve the gas crisis, not unleaded, but Ethereum gas. So it's going to be a great time. We've got Jack on now, who we'll bring on in a second. Let's get my man over here going. Hello, Jack.
Hey, how's it going?
I'm doing great, doing great. Hold on one second. We are live. Let me get you on here. Hello, hello. How's it going?
Hey, good. How you doing?
I'm doing great, man. Doing great. Good to have you. Where you at?
Hey,
In the
my
stateside?
pleasure. Fun to be here.
Yeah, are you? I know you were just traveling internationally. Are you back in the U.S.?
I am in San Francisco. I'm at
Oh,
our office in San Francisco, so it's nice to be home.
yeah. I bet. Yeah. Look, so I appreciate you jumping on today. Like, we kind of briefly connected on this, but I think it's a super interesting topic around gas, right? I think everyone like brings up gas as this just kind of like thing that is, and this thing that was, and people complain about it and all of this, but I think that there's not a lot of people really discussing why is it there, what are like hindrance that it's having to the market. And I would love to just kind of chat around and kind of like if we start maybe at the history of how we got here, right?
Yeah,
The history of a blockchain. So I mean, in your opinion, with the history of blockchain, like where and why did it come around?
yeah. I think gas is a very misunderstood thing, and I think people don't realize this. But without gas on Ethereum, you'd have incredibly poor performance, and there'd be major security issues. So I think happy to unpack that. But gas is actually your friend on the Ethereum network. Networks like Scale, we've come up with a way through modularization and some clever cryptography and economics models to actually flip the gas model on its head, where we still get the value of gas, but we can kind of change the way those transactions work. But on the Ethereum mainnet, gas is required because gas does three things. So one, gas it's a component of fees.
Mm-hmm.
So Ethereum doesn't run by itself. People have to run servers. They have to run computers essentially that are running the blockchain. And when
Mm-hmm.
you do a transaction or execute a smart contract, you have to pay for that. One method of paying is paying in gas. Okay, and gas is a component. It's a small amount of ETH, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not
Mm-hmm.
always small. I've had $1,000 gas fees before.
A
They can be very
thousand.
expensive. Yes.
And this is $1,000 just to pay the global computer to run your
Exactly. So
particular.
the amount of the computation that's going into that is part of the fee structure and the time. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Which actually brings up point two of what gas does. Gas is not just a fee, it's also a rate limiting vehicle. Okay. It's a
Mm-hmm.
way to make supply and demand flow in a nice manner. So imagine, you're on a ride platform, you're getting an Uber, you're getting a Lyft, and let's say there's no surge pricing and the price was always like a low price. Well, you would have to wait sometimes an hour for a ride. Um,
Mm-hmm.
the reason why surge pricing exists is because people that are willing to pay more can step to the front of the line, and it actually then not but surge pricing works better in rideshare platforms than it does Ethereum, because when the surge goes up, more drivers can come and it eases the load. Okay. So there's
So,
actually a ability to increase supply. Now, Ethereum doesn't have that luxury. It has a fixed amount of supply, a
mm-hmm.
fixed amount of gas that can be computed every second, and amount of transactions. So it really just has one method of doing prioritization, and that's raising fees. Okay. But
Right.
you can say I'm comfortable with a longer execution time and I'll pay less fees, or you may be issuing a transaction that has to happen quickly. You can pay a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
The third reason why gas exists is actually security. So there's a thing called DOSing or spamming of the network.
Mm-hmm.
And if people don't have to pay for transactions, and they're really cheap, they can just throw all of these fake transactions at the network and actually clog the network. It's a nefarious attack vector. And so gas protects the network. There's no central operator, right? It's all this decentralized group of people running servers.
Mm-hmm.
So it helps you pay the people. It helps you get prioritization for important transactions and better performance, and it also protects the network from spamming. So those are the three reasons why gas exists in Ethereum. It's also
Gotcha.
why it can be really expensive when everyone wants to use Ethereum at the same time.
Right, right, right. So I mean, so if if we're thinking about, and I think this is kind of like the interesting part too, is that you mentioned, so basically a blockchain running is a bunch of people running servers to maintain the blockchain itself. And when you go to make a transaction, you have to pay those people for running it, right? And like a similar Web2 kind of comparison would be that, when you want to use or run, say, something on Google Cloud, you're paying Google Cloud, right? Because they're the one running the servers.
Yes.
But in the case of a blockchain, you have to pay the network. Like someone needs to be compensated for their compute time, for their storage, for whatever it might be. And in the case of like Ethereum, which was born out of this idea as, Bitcoin itself was established to be an alternative to currencies, right? So it's there to be a medium of exchange or a store of value. And then, Ethereum came on and said, well, it would be a lot cooler if like we could actually build applications that ran on top of it. And in order to do that is a much, much bigger task than just having like currency transactions happen. And so what you're saying is that in order to make that level of a network work, is that you have to be able to safeguard against like DDoSing. So basically someone spamming the network with a bunch of stuff, making sure that you can prioritize who gets first access, or that pay to get to the top of the line kind of thing, which
Yep.
I think you could look at that as like a positive or negative thing, right? Like, is that good? Like, should it be like, should everyone fairly get equal opportunity to have their transactions done, or is it those that have money can get ahead of the line? I think we've seen some of that too, right? When like in some of the hacks that have happened, like people will pay exorbitant amount of gas, like tens of thousands of dollars, to get their transactions done instantly before anyone catches on what they're trying to do, which is kind of crazy. And
Yeah, it is an interesting question, right? But that's frankly what's happened to Ethereum, is that Ethereum now is in a place where if you want to participate in DeFi or use cases, it's people that are willing to spend a lot of money. So if you want to, if you're a person that wants to spend, set or pennies on a transaction and not hundreds of dollars, well, you're basically priced out of Ethereum because of the way Ethereum works. Now, that's why scaling solutions exist for Ethereum, which we'll get to later. But yeah, it's really what's happened, and it's a free market essentially, and so people are paying for the shared global resource.
Right, and so that's like an interesting thing I think to cover, is that we jumped into gas, right, which is there to compensate the network for running the blockchain, but the reason why there's a lot of people running like the blockchain, right, is that because blockchain in and of itself is not like, it's not Google running it, right? It's not one central company running it. And I think that for a lot of people, that's like an odd thing to kind of like wrap their head around. They're like, well, so if I'm paying the network, like who is the network? And that's kind of like one of the the underpinnings of like really what blockchain itself is like a core technology is, right? Like this distributed ledger where everyone has a copy that stays in sync. So whenever something happens, everyone can publicly verify and look to see, are these transactions valid?
Mhm.
And there's a lot of overhead to that, right? Like there's a lot of overhead to people having to run those. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
in the
By the way, that in itself, I think, is a really good. It's a really great statement for, and something that people should need to internalize about blockchain is blockchains must, one, you need to be able to incorporate payment, processing, security, performance, um, uh, operations, service. All of these things are incorporated in a fully autonomous manner, right?
mm-hmm,
It's just a bunch of people run symmetrical servers. There's all these symmetrical databases, and you plug yours into that network, and it does a lot of things for you. And when that happens, it means you're relying on a predefined economic plan, that, sometimes is difficult. It's difficult to take into consideration all the, the parameters of what could happen later, because you're not just, a company can just say, hey, let's go change a setting, let's go, swap this feature out, and rely on all these security parameters of
mm-hmm.
AWS or Google Cloud, whatever it might be. But blockchains are literally, anybody can come join them, and run the software. And so therefore you get all these great advantages that come with decentralization, but you get disadvantages, because of, just frankly the nature of decentralized networks.
Right. Yeah, and that I think that's so. If you had to, if you had to say in all of your travels and everyone that you talk to, because I know you talk to a ton of people, um, what do you think is one of the biggest like misconceptions I think people may have when they're, and maybe like biggest misconceptions that like a business right have, or a large brand or enterprise has about blockchain and coming into it, right? Do they think it's super easy? Do they think it's just like, it's going to be equivalent to, again, I'll use GCP that's been around for longer than a decade now and it's like is very fleshed out. I mean, so like, what do you like? Do you see something where you're constantly having to correct someone or say, well, you should think about this also?
Yeah, one thing I'll say is, so I started work. I came from enterprise software. I was, an executive and a founder at a number of enterprise software companies in SaaS, machine learning, mobile, different categories in my past life. And in 2017, I started working full time in blockchain. And I learned about Ethereum, and I said, you know what, my next business will be started in this space. And
Mm-hmm.
and one thing I'll say is that the maturity and understanding of blockchain has improved immensely from those times. In the last 5 years, it used to be like, oh, let's use a blockchain for this, and frankly, it like was not a very good use case. And
Right.
for me, it all comes down to, what is there value around decentralization? Is there value around giving, power or autonomy or visibility to your users,
Mm-hmm.
giving ownership to your users? There are all these values of blockchain that businesses can capture. Businesses that are thinking, oh, hey, great, we have this shared database and we're going to get all these business optimizations. We haven't really seen that go into, mass growth mode. But what we are seeing is businesses saying, hey, I can grow community by, and create much better brand engagement and a new monetization stream while supporting my fans or my users through issuing an NFT.
Mm-hmm.
Or, wow, by participating in this decentralized network, I can give, access and growth and empowerment to, this set of my users, and by incorporating this DeFi protocol into our technology stack, right? So there's, you need to see this base value of the blockchain and make sure it like matches a litmus test. And
Mm-hmm.
one thing I tell people is, you think about blockchain data. So typical enterprise servers are, they're kind of vertically supported in the sense that you've got the
Sure.
data, and you have backups that just really are for redundancy. And maybe you're using Salesforce.com, and they've
Mm-hmm.
backed your data up 7 times in different manners in case the first database goes down. It's not about what I'd say horizontal redundancy. Blockchains are about horizontal redundancy, where
Ah.
data is not stored vertically by one company. The data is stored horizontally by
Right.
many
Right.
entities. And The purpose they serve is not to have redundancy in case the data is lost. They serve to ensure that the data is the same.
Right,
Okay.
right, right.
And so what you're doing, you're actually paying for that data, the same database, many, 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 many times. It's living on all the servers that are running it, not on just that one instance on Amazon and whatever backups they might have for your redundancy. So it costs a lot more to run data and run applications on blockchains. And so you better make sure you have the business value around that. And that business value really is created around what comes through decentralization, in
Yeah,
my
that's
opinion.
yeah. I don't think I've heard it. I don't think I've heard it formulated that way. I think it's an excellent way to look at it. It's if you're thinking about going or starting your path into Web3. It's not necessarily like I'm gonna start correcting people now when they say like, can we put this on the blockchain, or like, can we leverage blockchain? It's better. It's definitely better to like take that perception of like, I don't even know if like philosophically is the word, but like, does the idea of decentralization and the value that that brings to the table actually create tangible business value for you as a company, but also like the impact that it can have to your customers. And I think one of the big points around decentralization, right? And if we speak in the context of where we're at today, it's that idea of like ownership of a asset has never, in the digital space, has never been more real than what it is today. And
Yep.
I think that ties into the other point you made that I think is pretty interesting, is that when you, if you're going to a web company, right, and they sell you, let's call it, we'll call it I was trying to think of a fake NFT. But if you go to if Google said, hey, here, you own this, this certain asset, right? But you can't, but it's only in that vertical slice where they own all of it and they can do whatever. And there's none of that horizontal replication where anyone else can verify that you do really own it and you can't really move it around. That is the difference between decentralization ownership and centralized ownership. Does that sound right?
Yeah, so let's use I'm gonna just dogpile on this example. So
Yeah.
say there's I'm just off the top of my head like world like one of the world's leading soft drink companies, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you've got whatever, like a big soft drink brand, global brand, all right, and they have tens of millions of really engaged fans and audience, people that buy their product every day. They store it in their fridge. Well, they can say, hey, let's launch an NFT. Let's just use our Amazon server. Let's get a database that says, here are the images, and then here are the users, and we'll send these users these images. And these images, when the users own them, well, hey, they could trade them back and forth with each other in our software platform, and whoever has it gets like 10% off, at Walmart or at whatever store they shop at every third week. Well, you know what? They could do that, but what they actually have is they just have a piece of software. They have a business software.
Mm-hmm.
The reason why that business would actually want to use a blockchain is they actually have digital assets that are in the wild that are literally owned by the user, and then the users have more engagement and trust because they're using something that's actually like a real NFT that's not on the servers of the soft drink company. It's owned by, it's on these third party products.
Mm-hmm.
The value they get by cashing that in is is guaranteed by the company off chain, but the on chain piece is all there. Now they also can interact with this global fluid market, and they could be trading and selling that to other people. They could be trying to build a collector set. That software business doesn't need to do anything. They literally can release this product, ensure they deliver on the on-chain component, while the off-chain component is completely plugged in this whole ecosystem of marketplaces, transaction,
Right.
global programmable, right? So it's I think thousands of times easier to execute on and dramatically more compliant when you just plug into this global machine that, one, users like more because it's not centralized. The NFT it's a real NFT. It's in a decentralized network. Two, you're plugged into this entire ecosystem of programmable money that is compliant, as opposed to needing to, If
Mm-hmm.
you're a money transmitter, guess what? You're bringing on dramatically more compliance than if you're plugging in. Now, you have to make sure that the ingress and the way you issue the NFTs, the way money enters your system is all goes through the same KYC, AML standards as a centralized launch. But once these NFTs are in the wild, they actually become part of this global decentralized marketplace, and actually helps you grow your brand and your engagement
Sure.
and and do things in a more automated manner.
That's interesting. And so something that I think that I've maybe like kind of thought about somewhat is
Mm-hmm.
I think that constantly trying to like distill down like what really makes and we'll continue using like NFTs I think as like a use case for the topic for
Yeah,
discussion.
it's an easy one to
Easy one to wrap around,
understand.
right? Is that do you think that one of the major things that makes it so important is that is because there is that shared interoperability maybe of the NFT itself across the global network, right? So if we think to the centralized one, like Google or your soda company might be able to like issue you an NFT, right? But if
Mm-hmm.
another platform or another marketplace wants to list it or show it or display it, odds are unless that soda company creates some API and like some standardized format, and then the marketplace has to build unique plugins to all of these different places that are trying to do it, like it just doesn't scale, it doesn't work. And what blockchain did, and what has given these things value, is that it is this like shared base layer that allows for all of these different functionalities to basically
Mm-hmm.
almost like, and all these different applications to basically almost pull from one centralized defined database ish type of thing.
Yeah, yeah. It's this like globally connected, decentralized database of money and users, right?
Right.
And like you said, from an API perspective, there's these things that are automatic. They're going to be rendered like they just plug in and they're going to render on any screen, right? They don't
Mm-hmm.
need, all the, it takes effort as you know to help get these things set up. But once they're set up, then you're rocking and rolling. You're just plugged into this, the global
Mm-hmm.
computer,
Right.
which is
Right.
and I mean, the other thing too is that by giving up control, so here's the thing, there are a few main business models for blockchain. One is you just completely throw away all traditional business, parameters, and you become this decentralized DAO structure. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
The other one is
Radical
you're
end.
actually a traditional
Yeah.
centralized business, and what you're doing is you're incorporating and utilizing decentralized products in your go to market. When you
Got it.
do that, you actually give up a certain amount of control than as if you were to just run that product entirely centrally,
Mm-hmm.
issue it centrally. By giving up control and giving up oftentimes even profit,
Yep.
and uh, what you're doing is you're actually growing community and you're growing profit more so down the road by
Right.
actually like giving up more control and embracing decentralization
Mm-hmm.
with the products that you launch that are decentralized. And to your point earlier, you mainline into this global machine, that saves you the tens of hundreds of hours of work of
Yeah.
trying to launch something in this more like centrally defined manner.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that's an interesting way to like think about it. And I don't know if even I think about it as much in that frame of reference. It's like this undercurrent that supports everything and everything that builds on top of it. And therefore, because you're able to freely move the things that you own around between all of these different applications or like different stores or experiences or
Mhm.
whatever they might be, that drives such a that's kind of like that's like maybe one of like the fundamental things that defines like ownership, and
Mhm.
why now ownership in the digital space seems so much different or so much more tangible, than what it did pre 20
Mhm.
2017, I guess, when ERC-21 came out, or pre '09 before Satoshi's thing came out. It's that
Yeah.
ability to move it around, which is like a fascinating, like I think a fascinating like human thing to think about. It's like, oh well, if even if a company did give me something physical, but I could only go look at it or play with it if I went to their store. Like if I could only use my computer when I was at Best Buy, do I really own it
Yeah.
or
And
not?
it's, what's interesting too is the value of decentralization has gone up immensely from when I started working full time in the space in 2017. I used to go to, going to VCs in Silicon Valley, telling about what we're doing in 2017, and they're saying, well, the users really care who owns where their data lives or who makes the
Mm-hmm.
money. And you know what? Back then it was like kind of like a vitamin, right? It was like a nice to have.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's a painkiller. Like it's like you need it.
Yeah.
And if you, especially, it's all segmentation too. You go to users who are younger and tech savvy, and many of them are crypto native, where they're fully down the crypto rabbit hole. They don't want, they won't use, they don't care about an NFT if it's not owned by them. If they don't,
Right.
they can't track its provenance and know that they're owning something that's a part of the chain. They don't want to use applications where their data is being monetized against them and their best
Mm-hmm.
interest. They want to use products that they have a say in, and like, and have can participate in governments. They want to use savings accounts that are decentralized, and
Right.
plug in USDC into Compound and Aave and get interest instead of going to their bank, right?
Right.
But
Right.
it doesn't. Businesses need to fight that. They actually can roll into that and embrace that, and I think have a lot of growth. They're
Mm-hmm.
tremendous growth.
Yeah, and that's the interesting part too, right? Is that I some of the enterprises and business that I've talked to have seen Web3, right, as almost like a it's like something to be scared of, when
Mm-hmm.
in reality it's quite the opposite. And it's
Yeah.
I think you make a good point, is that like you don't have to take your centralized business that you've been operating in well, that you have happy customers in for X number of years, and say, great, you know what, all of this is going to the wayside. Like we're now a DAO. Like you don't have to do any of that to be part of this movement. You can actually supplement your business by creating offerings. And I think the great point to your side, I think this will be one of the pivotal points in history, this year and going on, is that Web 2 or Web 1 was about a lot of static content. Web 2 was about the creator economy where people are generating content. Web 3 around decentralization, but more concretely around community, and creating and giving your customers a platform to form communities within themselves and build stronger bonds around your brand or your offering or whatever it is you happen to be doing. And
Mm-hmm.
underpinning that is this idea of them like having ownership of whatever it is that makes them part of your world. Um,
And the issue is, to date, it's been really difficult to do that for businesses in a really scalable way because of gas fees and
mm-hmm.
covered user experiences. And that's frankly why we built Scale. Is
Right.
we Stan Cladkin, my co-founder, we had ideas for our own applications and our ways to drive growth through community and engagement and
Mm-hmm.
decentralization. And we realized it was just not feasible. And Stan had designed this scaling infrastructure for Ethereum that has grown into what Scale is now.
Mm-hmm.
And it is gasless, it's fast, it's a user experience optimized blockchain, but it also plugs into this global computer I talked about earlier. If you're not in this Ethereum EVM ecosystem, you don't get to mainline in to the
Right.
tooling and the infrastructure and the programmable money and the DeFi ecosystem and everything that's happening. And
You
so
don't get
that's I think another critical part of the stack.
to hardline into the matrix.
Yeah,
I just watched the new Resurrection, the latest one, the other night when I was
yeah,
on the road. And I don't know. They lost me by this one. The first couple I got it, but I started to
yeah.
started
They jumped the
started to
shark a
lose it.
little bit.
Yeah, but I mean, so you bring up a good point, and this is something else that I was curious to get your like opinion on. Is that Ethereum came out with all these promises that it was going to be a platform to build applications on, like decentralized applications. Um,
Hmm.
and applications are they require a lot of I think that in order to maintain current expectations from users on what an application is. It's a lot of transactions, right? A lot of stuff going on, and gas really itself is putting like this chokehold on innovation, putting a chokehold on what decentralized applications can truly become. And I'm curious to hear on like what are some of those factors that are like why is gas putting such a chokehold on it? Like, is it that cost becomes a problem, scale, why is it holding us back so much?
Yeah. Well, I think again, I just want to start this answer by saying that with, hey, the Ethereum, the founders of Ethereum and the core team building it, like it was hard for them to envision what was going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the other piece of this is the thing about blockchain is that these are unstoppable databases, they're often called, but they're also not easily upgradable databases. Okay.
Yeah.
And so what happens is you get all of this traction and growth, but you can't just port the liquidity over to the next version, right? You lose their strength in their immutability is also their weakness in their ability to upgrade. Now, but hey, props to that team because we're all standing on the shoulders of giants here, right? They without the work they did and without the value Ethereum has now, we're not going to get to the next level in my opinion. I'm a big supporter and believer in Ethereum. Now,
Mm-hmm.
Scale though uses Ethereum for, Ethereum in my opinion is incredibly valuable for transactions that are really expensive and really important and that don't need to happen frequently. Okay.
Okay.
And so if you pay a $500 gas fee on something that, on a $50,000 transaction, that's okay. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Or $100,000 transaction, you're paying for the security, you're paying for the rate limiting, you're paying for the spam prevention. Right. But that doesn't work for, let's say, a game or web3 product. Right.
Right.
And so what Scale uses Ethereum to run a lot of the network security parameters of the Scale network.
Mm-hmm.
Scale's a second network next to Ethereum. It's like almost a sibling network. It's like a sister network or brother network to Ethereum. And what it does then is it can plug into the Ethereum world and run Ethereum virtual machine, and then do zero cost transactions. It can run, dramatically faster. Each single chain can do over 100 transactions per second, and it could be doing, hundreds of thousands or millions of transactions across the network. As the network grows and grows, it can grow linearly because it's this modular network, and it actually resembles what the internet looks like today. The internet is not one big giant shared database. The internet is many, many weakly coupled databases that can all talk to each other, message securely, and update state. And there's cryptographic principles there that live and help us interact in a Web2 world financially. And so what Scale is doing is it's emulating a lot of that architecture by having many modular databases that can all talk.
Mm-hmm.
And it also flips the gas model on its head. Instead of the end user needing to pay the gas fee, the group, company, or owner or renter of a chain pays Scale fees and subsidizes the gas fee for the end user.
I see.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so there's still a fee. There's still a way to pay for your piece of service, and you're paying for it in the modular way.
Mm-hmm.
There's spam prevention still, because you can actually implement this fake gas called fuel. Scale fuel has no monetary cost, but if you're a spammer and you're using this, you'll get out of it really quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Your prioritization is more fair and based on utilization within a chain.
Mm-hmm.
And your chain, the developer is helping pay for your prioritization by paying for compute space in the Scale network. So
interesting.
So that model, it's a different design, but it's very similar to Web2 B2B pricing models. And that's, the world we came from. But our goal was to make sure we still didn't sacrifice decentralization for that model. So a DAO can still fund this chain with many different individual contributors. It doesn't need to be a company. A big global enterprise software company could rent their own chain and have a decentralized open blockchain network that only they can deploy contracts to, and basically helping their users ensure they get good performance and they have enough compute space and storage. And it also has the security parameters that you get with gas by the Scale fuel or S fuel. So that was the design model for Scale.
But yeah, that's so you mentioned something interesting too, and this one actually comes up to me quite a bit, um, and it's around estimating like cost to run something like this, right? Or like managing your costs. Like if you're a business or whoever looking to get into this, like if you're coming from a leadership position in the Web2 world, you're going to say, all right, what's my total cost of ownership? Like how much do I expect to burn per month? Um, what's my average transaction fee going to be? And like I think normally one of the big things that is somewhat hindering innovation in the space is that unpredictability, right? It's so unpredictable. Like there could be a bunch of network congestion. Next thing you know, like you're screwed. You're paying $1,000 per transaction. Next thing you know, it could be down off a cliff. One month you're burning way up. Next month you're burning way down. And from a
Yep.
operational perspective, like that is very inhibitive of a lot of people wanting to get into it. Like
Yeah.
innovation team could be like, hell yeah, this is awesome, and the CFO is going to like poo poo on it and be like, I don't think so.
Yeah. Yeah.
uh,
Yeah. I mean, when you're, a lot of businesses that tried to build something on Ethereum that were planning on covering the gas fees for their users, those products are,
yeah,
are dead.
dead,
they
dead.
were sold because they were estimating saying, hey, oh, don't we we'll subsidize the gas fees for our users. They're only 5 cents per transaction. Guess what? All of a sudden that 5 cents is like $100 per transaction, and that adds up really quickly. If you're doing millions of transactions a week, it's just
Right,
not, you just can't. It yeah
doesn't
so
work.
the unpredictability of gas and volatility is a killer for any, and if you're not subsidizing that cost for your users, well, get ready for your users to then do the rate limiting for you and say no unless
Mm-hmm.
they're getting values with $100 transaction fee.
Right. Yeah, and it's been interesting too. Like I've been part of like some NFT drops where like one single project drop. I think like maybe Invisible Friends was like the last one. Like one single project drop will spike the gas fee of the entire like Ethereum mainnet network. And to think that it's
Mhm.
like one project can have that many like ripples across, again is one I think absolutely mind boggling. And like crazy awesome to think about. But on the second side, again, like in the context of like being an operational side business, trying to prepare for something like that is really hard. And like I think you said it great. If you try to push that cost on the end users, eventually they're going to throw their hands up and be like, I want to be part of your stuff, but like I'm not paying $100 per transaction, or even $10 per transaction, depending on what the transaction type is, could really like hinder that like innovation and growth. Which leads me to like a lot of ideas is that like and this is going to be a serious hot take. So be ready for this. Be
Yeah,
ready for
yeah.
some blowback from this one. But
Let's do it. Let's
like
do it. Let's
I
go.
think that
I like
there's
it. Make it
yeah. So
interesting.
I would argue that there's like a level of like stagnation in applications built on top of blockchain because there's unpredictable transaction cost and there's unreliable speed on what those transactions would be. And if you can't bet at least on even just average transaction speed, trying to design a application or an experience or something becomes, I mean, almost impossible. I mean, how do you even, I mean, even all the way down to thinking about like user functionality, but all the way up to user experience of like, this feature would be great as long as it's under like a 2-second delay, but as soon as it might spike to like 5 minutes, like the whole thing's broken. Like real-time strategy games or like any type of like live interaction, what people love these days. All of that
Yeah.
kind of goes out the window, right?
Yep.
And this is the Corey opinion only, that there's a bit of
Mhm.
stagnation in the new applications coming out. Um, but it does seem now like we're talking to more like, I don't want to say, I mean, gas is not the root of all evil by no means. But it is a bit of a thing that we need to evolve past. And that's, I mean, as you're saying, that's what Scale has done, which is incredible.
Well, and even if the fees are low, uh, if you every time your user uses your product, you remind them that they have to pay you,
Mm-hmm.
you actually incentivize them to use your product less. And so it's something we all learned in the Web 2 days of that, like, hey, let's remove friction. Let's
Mm-hmm.
get people using our products as much as possible and getting as much value as possible. And then you monetize in a way that, makes the most sense. But what you don't want to do is have your monetization strategy impede your ability to ever build a good user experience.
Right.
And even if it's only 10 cents per transaction, each time they're doing it, they're like, oh yeah, I have to pay, instead of like doing stuff, and then you're capturing value by monetizing other ways, whether taking cut of the total transaction in an automated way, or a tier-based pricing model, or a marketplace fee, or other mechanisms. So all of these things, there's just more sophisticated ways that are proven that Web3 can learn from, and Web 2.
Mm-hmm.
But you need to have a blockchain that enables you to do that, and that's why it's one of the huge advantages of Scale. Is it's, to my knowledge, the only gasless blockchain that works in that manner.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, which if I start to like pull on that thread one, right? Like, so if we take Corey's opinion that gas is the major leash on what could be, right? If we take that as
Yeah.
fact, which by no means claiming that it is fact, but if we take that as the case and we start to look at like, all right, like what does a gasless future look like? And I think from the Scale's eyes, like a gasless future is very real. And like, what does that actually start to like really mean for decentralized apps and people building on top of this in a way where all of this hindrance before around pricing and speed and all of this is gone? Like, do you see people coming and taking like just trying to say like, okay, here's my Web 2 app. You know what? Now that things are gasless and transaction things are high, like I'm just gonna like airdrop. I'm just gonna put this thing right on chain, and now, boom, like decentralized like value. Or do you think that like something like that wouldn't work? I guess maybe the question I'm asking is that like, so if I came to Scale and I had a Web 2 platform running, could I just port it onto Scale and hope for the best? Or do you think people really need to actually still take into consideration, like to our original, or one of your original points around like, you have to think about like what decentralization actually means, and like what the value back will be, not only to you as a business, but also to your customers. So even if I do give you, and a autobahn of unlimited speed, and you can go for free, do you still recommend people to take that kind of like thought process route on
Oh yeah,
decentralization?
and I think also it just so one thing I'll brag about you guys for a second here is,
Oh,
having a trusted partner who's done it before, who knows, one, not just how to technically implement it, but two, how to, from a business value proposition, what are the components that are going to work the best and fit the best with blockchain, and then being able to like design, implement, configure and implement. That's the next piece of that. But yeah, hey, if you there's a deep knowledge
mm-hmm.
around these implementations, and so yeah, I think Gigster, what you're doing here is phenomenal, helping businesses and the partners that we're working with Scale, design, configure, and implement. That's critical. The other piece I'll just say here, blockchains are Scale's an incredibly fast user experience blockchain, but it's just one piece of the puzzle. You also need to think about the wallet integration, fiat on ramps, fiat off ramps,
Mm-hmm.
KYC, AML, then and other components of compliance. So there's a whole basket of challenges,
Right.
and if one of them doesn't come together well, you can really impede your growth. So we are
Mm-hmm.
focusing on one key critical component of that by removing gas fees and making sure transactions execute quickly and on time, in the right manner. But hey, I think, all that being said, you've got to. It helps working with professionals to help you design the whole recipe.
Well, thank you for that. I'm blushing. I don't know if it's just because like I'm hot in here, or if I'm blushing. But thank you. Yeah. No. Um, yeah. No. It is an interesting part, and like this is the, I think that there's blockchain itself, right? The technology surrounding it. I think, if we look at 2017 until now, and if you were to look at that on paper, the maturity and the growth has been incredible and like very fast, right? But if you, I think what I usually talk to people about and like have to educate them some on is that even if in the news and in the media online we're saying like there's all this innovation and growth and going stuff so quickly, like it's still only 4 years old, right? And if you're coming at this and your background in history might be in building Web 2 stuff where, you know, GCP, Amazon have been around for decades, WordPress has been around since I don't know, like I don't know, forever, like before the internet, maybe, I don't know. And like they've been so flushed out over time that they all seem like really easy and like stuff to do that, when building in Web3, it's still like, a bit of like an iceberg, and that, there's, while on top, it might be some easy stuff, but a lot of that work to make it underneath actually happen is more than meets the eye, right? That's been true on every type of emerging tech that I've been fortunate enough to be a part of, whether that was AI and ML, IoT, like the early days of like BYOD and like mobile within enterprise, like it all took so much effort to do and now has been made much more easier. But moving into the Web3 space, a lot of great tooling and infrastructure and stuff out there, but being able to like think through all of it is not as trivial as it might seem. And that is slowly, I think, getting better and better, which is amazing, as more and more of these apps come. But I can't wait to see like when the status quo of like applications launching are major, like 51% Web3 first. And whenever that like flip happens, I think is going to be a very incredible time to be alive. And like what that means for all of this.
So you bring up mobile and BYOD. So I used to work at Good Technology back in 2000.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it was this, these early days. I think our team was, our product marketing people were some of the key people, behind the BYOD term. And because Good let you bring any device you wanted as opposed to just a BlackBerry, right? It was and with mobile device management and everything that came with that whole wave. But we had an application app store, because I think something like 90 of the top 100 companies used Good in the world. The majority of the Fortune 1000. So there would just hundreds and hundreds of thousands of enterprise users, and so it was a perfect place to launch an app store, and all these devices were there. And but what this in 2008, the issue was the network speeds were still incredibly slow. I think they're still 2G. The device batteries were horrible. The memory and compute power on these devices were horrible. And there's just, you couldn't do anything. It was, you could build an application, but guess what? No one wanted to use it. Email worked really well, because email is one of these things that a lot of stuff can happen. And then you can hit a message and it just sends a very light package of data.
Right.
It's not that this whole interactive component with, representing data on the screen and having people click back and forth and, rendering like complex objects. It's really, email was easy. So was text messaging. That's why they launched. And, with crypto, guess what? Trading tokens, sending money, super simple, easy, lightweight. But when you integrate smart contracts, it's more complex and it's longer. And now we're seeing, all these, anyways, we're right where we were, I think, in 2008 and 2007 in mobile, in the application space. And, in 2010, after the iPhone had launched and network speeds improved and, device, power went up dramatically, all of a sudden we had millions of people playing each other simultaneous games around the world, like simultaneous gameplay. And that's just was unimaginable before 4G internet and the device speed and power. So we're kind of going through that same evolution. And I think a lot of you who may have been working in in B2B or enterprise during those days, you probably remember the state of mobile apps. If you were like still in high school or college or however old you were and not in the workforce yet, well, I'll tell you, it was painful. But what we're experiencing in Web3 is a real similar growth curve, and these things happen slowly and then they happen really fast. So I do think your statement that 51% of apps being Web3 seems like crazy right now, but it's actually not that far away by way technology growth curves function.
Yeah, I agree, and that's amazing that you used to work for Good. So I 2008, 2009, I had a consulting firm in Memphis doing like enterprise mobility, and FedEx was one of our big clients, and we were going after this like
Awesome.
much larger deal, and then found out that Good was one of our competitors, and you guys were light years ahead of where we were. But I remember seeing it, and I was like, "Fuck, we're definitely not going to win this contract."
Well, that's cool. We were kicking around the same
Yeah, yeah, couldn't
part of the
believe it,
world.
man.
Yeah.
But interesting. So we're getting towards the end of time here. We did have one question that come in that I do think is kind of interesting, and I do think that especially from an enterprise standpoint will be relevant. Um, so if you have a company, right, and let's say that you're a global company with a lot of different places around the world, you might have like thousands of employees. Um, is it still possible to do like almost like a private network, or like a private blockchain within just the walls of your company, um, so that you might be able to have like your own NFT marketplace within your company, or your own DAO within your company? Like, do you think that's
Yeah.
going to
So
take off?
yeah. So that's a really good question, and it actually kind of goes into with the vision of Scale.
Mm-hmm.
So with Scale, is there are many blockchains. It's a network of modular blockchains. All right. And instead of having, just one shared blockchain, there's a lot of these chains. Now, they're all still open, decentralized, but only open to a certain extent, because the chain owner, so let's say a business were to rent a Scale chain, they could even white label that chain, and they could label it, whatever, business chain.
Right.
And you know what? It's still publicly open. People can see what's happening. There is a privacy feature that will be added in the next year, but the point is, it's an open public network. But with regards to who can deploy contracts, it's limited. So you
Mm,
could say only my business is able to deploy their application to this chain. All
right.
right. And then some other non-compliant DeFi application with anonymous founders, they can't deploy to the same chain as you, which makes your compliance case stronger. It makes you can guarantee your performance. You can
Mm-hmm.
guarantee all the data on that chain is KYC AML and clean. And so it's actually a really great feature for businesses where you're not running a private blockchain, because private blockchains are run in a private manner by, you know, uh, a small set of validators typically, who are just a
Mm-hmm.
couple businesses. This is an open network where you have all of these validators around the world, and they're all running your service, but only you can deploy your application. So it's kind of the best of both worlds, is how we like to think of it.
Got it. Yeah. So you still get the upside of like public verifiability of integrity of the network, but only you can be the ones to actually deploy stuff. So you're basically getting the both the best of both
Yeah.
worlds.
Yeah, and the you might have, this whole random set of validators around the Scale network. All these validators are running the servers for you, not the set. So let's say Gigster could have a Gigster chain
Mm-hmm.
and have these business applications that run on this, and some other business wants to deploy to they can't without Gigster's permission, right? They would, but those servers are, you know, made up of the servers all around the world that run Scale. And
I
so
see. That's. I think. I mean, that's an interesting like.
mutability, public guarantees, the global monetary defense, the securities pooled. So
Mm-hmm.
validators are randomly assigned to your chain and rotated and penalized universally if they
Right.
were acting bad. They're motivated universally across the network to perform well.
Mm-hmm.
And so you get all these public blockchain benefits while having a kind of public slash private implementation yourself.
Right. And I think that too is going to be like something that's fascinating to see in the coming years, about like what decentralization does in the context of community building, but also like what is that impact on like traditional business, right? And that like I think there's a certain level of like affiliation that everyone feels with the business that they work at, right? Like you do it quite a bit. Or you're there 40 hours a week, let's say. You do have some level. You can define that in some form that it's a community, and how taking these principles of decentralization and what DAOs are kind of pioneering right now, but what those evolve into to almost like similar with like BYOD, where people started to expect from the business the same level of quality of applications they were getting on the App Store from the business. Like, are people going to start expecting that same level of community engagement, that community feel that they get from these external places and these external digital communities, and then take that to the workplace and be like, wow, you know what? Actually, I know that we all work remote now, but like it kind of sucks. I wish we had some form of a governance token or some form of, shared participation and decision making, or some easy shared form of like community treasury, or we can choose which charity it goes to, or maybe it gets paid out to us, or some form of that. Like, I wonder if that, I would assume if we were talking about the same tech arc of BYOD, that we might see something the same here.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
Which is going to be,
get ready.
Get ready.
It's about to get, there's so many things launching. And, I think I get a cool front row seat to see the different ways businesses are, planning their launch into Web3.
Yeah, it's gonna be an exciting time. But with that, man, thank you so much for stopping by. I think this was incredible. Definitely learned a lot, and have started to think. I mean, definitely some like different frames of view. I think you have a great macro view on like what's going on, and kind of like understanding for it. So I appreciate you sharing that with us. And yeah,
likewise. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, next time I want to dig into a little bit more like the actual mechanics behind SKALE, and like how some of that stuff working. So I think it's fantastic. But all right, with that, enjoy the rest of your day, and I will chat with you soon, man.
Thank you. All right, thanks everyone.
All right, and that was incredible. Again, like I said before, like I think the whole idea of like gas and why it's such a problem is something that really gets lost in the conversations from day to day. Everyone gets so fucking tied up on what NFT is going to go to the moon, which crypto token should I be holding, that a lot of people stop to address like the underlying problem, and we start to just kind of put it in the back of our minds because that's where revenue and money and dollar signs are, and that's what traditional markets like chase after. But it's good to see that there are companies out there that are taking a lot of these fundamental issues and putting solutions to them, because at the end of the day, it's going to be really hard to build a full global decentralized future if we can't have reliable understanding on what network speeds are going to be and what transactions are going to cost. And if you don't know what those are, like, how can you design around that? So it's a way bigger problem than I probably have ever given it credit for. But with that, I appreciate you all for stopping by. Everyone that was in chat, thank you so much for the questions. It was super, super helpful. And we are looking forward to the next one of these.